Thank you very much for attending today. I'm Michael Miller, hosting the second part of today's conference. Welcome all to C-Lab 2019. This is a very interesting panel. Who would have thought that technology and data would be infiltrating the cannabis industry? Nobody would have thought about that 10, 20 years ago. Today we have a distinguished panel and a terrific moderator. Our moderator today is Darren Roberts. He's the co-founder and chief executive officer of Green Mile Holdings, a tech firm that has developed community-based mobile personalization products and enterprise-level tech systems for the cannabis industry. It's an industry leader in cannabis product data insight, proprietary technologies, and machine learning. The company has developed a consumer data platform, a cannabis social network, mobile app that has garnered over 1 million users and is currently developing an on-demand delivery platform scheduled to hit the market in the last quarter of this year. Roberts previously worked in the financial lending sector as a managing partner, has invested in both the public and private sectors for over 20 years. Darren, thank you for joining us today. Gary Allen is the COO of New Frontier Data. Welcome, Gary. Gary's a visionary thought leader in the tech space, is robustly experienced in the world of entrepreneurship, from startup to exit, and is well known for his accomplishments in marketing technology. Some of Gary's successes include the creation of a market-first mobile banking app in 1998, building the market-leading bid management technology while at Performix, purchased by DoubleClick, now known as Dart Search, and further purchased by Google in 2007. As CEO, growing a top competitive intelligence firm that was purchased by Kantar Media. Gary has spent the last 4 years as the principal of Spire Strategy Consulting, now known as Modern Minds, where he concentrates on bringing the ideas of startups to market, from mobile apps to a completely new STEM, technology, engineering, and math digital education platform. Alan is committed to seeing the dreams of entrepreneurs realized, and prior to leading Modern Minds, Gary helped an aspiring businessman in Minneapolis create Forward, a marketing agency that combined marketing and consulting in a revolutionary and unique way. Ford was one of the fastest growing market firms during Gary's tenure as partner. Jeffrey Harris, welcome. Thank you for attending today. Jeff is the CEO of Springbig, a loyalty communications and marketing automation platform for the cannabis industry. Springbig uses SMS, loyalty marketing, and other tools to encourage repeat business for cannabis retailers. Prior to Springbig, Jeffrey founded a loyalty marketing company, IntoQ, which focused on developing and managing data-driven programs for large retail and financial services firms. Harris has also completed a 20-year run as a member of Vistage, an organization dedicated to improving the effectiveness of CEOs. And finally, we have Scott Kaufman. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. Scott is the CEO of CalmEffect. Scott has 25 years of experience in a variety of industries, including elective health, hospitality, retail, vision care, and consulting. He specializes in marketing strategy and effectiveness, direct response, digital marketing, and reporting analytics strategies, and excels at working closely with executives and their teams on strategy implementation. Over the past 10 years, Scott has focused on healthcare marketing, working on teams to acquire cost-effective leads, optimize customer buy cycles, and funnels. A proven leader with the ability to influence and develop cross-functional relationships with executives, team members, co-workers, and clients. Thank you all very much. I'm now going to hand it off to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Very in-depth and appreciated. Anyway, I'm very excited to be here today, and when we were talking with Robert about, the panel, data, technology, and retail, it just, piqued all of our interests. The nice thing about, I'll say, these three gentlemen, and I will lump myself in there as well, is that we all have extensive experience being in the cannabis space, which really is sort of an oxymoron. But we have been in the space for a few years, and it's amazing all the different involvement that has taken place, from 2013 and 14, sort of where we are today. So our goal today is to really just talk a little bit about some of those evolutions, how the different businesses and experiences that we've all seen go through. So, I'd like to, start off, with you, Jeff. Springbig, the leader in loyalty within the space. Tell us a little bit about, in more detail, about what your platform does do and how valuable it is to the dispensary and to the consumer, and some of the things you've seen change over the last few years being since launching.
So we created Springbig to provide retailers across the country, cannabis retailers, the ability to create and manage their customer loyalty programs within their retail environment, and then leverage the data that they collect from consumers that allow them to receive that information to then market to those consumers more effectively, to drive customers back into the store more often and to spend more money. So our objective is to provide them with the tools and the platform to be able to accomplish that. And a big part of what we're doing, and a big part of how we help our retail clients, is with the ability to receive that information and provide segment that information, to be able to categorize it, so a retailer can then market to the consumer in the most appropriate way at the most appropriate time. So a great example would be, we have a big customer in Washington that noticed that he has groups of customers that shop at different times of the day. So he has morning shoppers, afternoon shoppers, and evening shoppers. So at the beginning, he would send out a message every day at around 11 a.m. to all of his customers. So if you think about what happened, he may have missed the people that shopped in the morning. And then the people that shopped in the evening, they've forgotten about the text message by the time they're ready to shop. So he realized this, and we created the ability for him to segment his customers based on the time of day that they shop. And he then switched his messaging to send messages 3 times a day: 9 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m. And he saw an increase of response and traffic of 5x of what he was seeing when he sent the text out once a day. So he basically broke up his group of customers. So he sent the same amount of text messages in a day, but he broke it up into those different segments. So that's just an example of how we are able to take the information that we collect on behalf of the retailer with the permission of the customer, and then provide it in a way that allows them to be smarter about how they talk to customers. And I guess the evolution that we've seen is that, at the beginning, every retailer was basically just figuring out a message for a day or the week, however frequently they wanted to message their customers. Some message more frequently, some message less, and they would send it out. But now we're seeing the industry evolve, where people are getting smarter about how they talk to customers, and they're starting to leverage the data that they're collecting to be smarter and more targeted in their messaging.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Scott, it's one of the things being in Florida and just sort of going through and seeing, the rules, regulations, and just sort of getting information and education on understanding, okay, well, how do I get, medical marijuana? How can I get some of these medicinal benefits? There seems to be like a lot of confusion that takes place, but it seems like, based on what your focus is sort of you bring that consumer through the whole chain and educate them. I'd love to hear a little bit more, and I think our audience would love to sort of hear how what you do and the value you're bringing not only to the consumer, but also to the dispensaries in Florida.
Yeah, thank you. So what CalmEffect does, it's a customer-facing platform that finds customers, educates them, and then matches them with doctors or dispensaries or other products and services. And what we found was, when we started about 2 years ago, was that dispensaries and doctors had challenges with marketing, both with potential skill sets as well as regulation, and that there were so many patients in Florida, or potential patients, that didn't know where to go and thought it was too expensive and thought about all the obstacles. And so there was really a lot of gridlock, and we felt that by sitting right in the middle, we could connect those dots. And what we found with data is that there's a lot of people on the sidelines that are interested in medical marijuana but don't know where to go. And so what we do is we actually advertise, we pay for media, we find people who are interested, who may be on those sidelines and kind of kicking the tires. We bring them in to our database, and then we educate them with email, text, phone calls to help answer those questions for them so they're more comfortable with the process. We help them find affordable doctor's appointments. so they can get seen and not worry about how much it's going to cost. We help them with their state application process, and then we can match them with different dispensaries around the state. I think it's very important when we think about data is tools like Jeff was talking about, where to know the behaviors of our customers, right? To know that they're not ready to see a doctor today, but they may be in 2 months or 3 months. To be able to, for the retailers to be able to use data to predict when the next purchase is going to be, or when it should be, right? If we're selling a product that should last 30 days, then how do we use a customer contact strategy to make sure that that patient's actually going to buy in 30 days? And what happens in 35 days? Does that mean that the customer's about to come in and call you? Does that mean that the customer has totally defected and isn't in the industry anymore? Or does that mean they've gone to your competitor, right? And so how do you prevent that, and how do you continue to facilitate a relationship with those patients so they continue to, on the right track and get the medicine for the relief that they need?
Thank you. So new frontier data, it's sort of like, okay, the pioneer, if you will, being in the space, whether I'm in Vancouver, Toronto, overseas, California, there's new frontier data, full of incredible insights and information. And Gary, knowing you for so many years and seeing all the incredible work that you guys have done, where are you seeing, the data landscape presently right now, and how it sort of encompasses technology today versus sort of where we were when we met back in 2015?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much. And gentlemen, thank you also for being on the panel. The idea for New Frontier Data, really, Jada is sitting in the audience, so I have to be very careful. My boss, 2 of my investors are sitting in the audience, so I'm gonna be very careful. Now, the New Frontier Data has always been a data aggregator. We're a big data and technology platform company that's designed to deliver business intelligence and insights on how the industry is running and should be running in a way that everybody can understand. It's really making sure that the industry, we're trying to make sure that the industry is operating off of vetted information and not inference or opinion, right? So, how the evolution has happened over the last few years. As Jada started the company in 2014, the idea was really to do that, right? To make sure that the industry had vetted information and business intelligence that could run, and really was geared towards operators and investors and researchers. And as the industry has matured over the last year and a half, we've spent a lot of time and invested a lot of money in understanding, bringing technology capabilities and understanding where the consumer is in this whole value chain, right? So in the beginning, letting investors know where the money is going and how that investment is maturing. Then researchers, operators, lawmakers, how the industry is maturing and how they're going from nascency to operations. And now we're really focused on, and through our recent acquisitions, really focused on opening up 2 things. The democratization of data, allowing access to all of our data through our data marketplace, but then also through enabling technologies, really enabling discover, define, and deliver. Discovering who the customers are, where they are, and what business, CPG companies, current industry operators, and the mature marketplace. Discovering how they're going to get into the industry, defining how they're going to engage with those customers. There's technology at each one of these, at each stage, and then delivery, right? Very much with both the gentlemen here, Jeff and the loyalty programs, understanding exactly what is that rinse and repeat, what is the value, what is that last mile look like, and how do you continue to grow incrementally that last mile, right? How do you educate patients? And how do you, New Frontier Data is really poised and is delivering enabling technologies to service providers, right? We won't go directly to the patient or the consumer. We will go to those servicing the patient and consumer and provide them data, provide them technology services, and then of course provide them the capability of, all the way from market entry to product delivery.
One of the things that's always sort of interesting to me is that these 3 gentlemen have sort of brought their skill set and their experience and success from the mainstream world, if you will, and brought it into a very early stage into the cannabis industry. And so, Jeff, I was just sort of curious, based on your technology and your background with, loyalty as well, what were some of those early on challenges that you faced, and how have you sort of see them evolved over the years as sort of legalization is getting closer and closer, or freeing up definitively, significantly, obviously, on the statewide level?
What I find amazing about this industry is that there, in essence, had to be a whole ecosystem had to be created for cannabis. So if you think about the duplication of all of these companies, you know, on the data side, on the servicing side, basically every company that existed outside of cannabis had to be built for cannabis, because the companies that were outside of cannabis didn't want to enter the cannabis space because it's not federally legal yet, and they didn't really understand all the dynamics. So now that this whole ecosystem is created, now in addition to that, on the plant touching side, if you think about growers, extractors, retailers, they basically created a whole industry too. At the end of the day, in this business, you have manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and consumers. It's the same setup as you have in any other industry in the world, but it had to be completely recreated. So to your point, Darren, what I find amazing is the evolution. When we started in this industry 3 years ago, the maturity, what I'll call the business maturity of a lot of the customers that we dealt with was completely different than the business maturity today. The people that were leading those businesses 3 years ago were very smart. They got in really early. They may not have run big companies before, but they were entrepreneurs that really understood the opportunity. And over time, what we're finding is those businesses are maturing. They're bringing in professional management. And the dynamic of the interaction with customers is completely changing. And I think that's probably, to me, is the biggest difference, is who we're dealing with today and how they interact with us as compared to 3 years ago.
No, that makes sense. And Scott, sort of bringing that back over to you, and you know, me obviously dealing with you know, some of the physicians and different you know, medical professionals, if you will, in Florida. Have you noticed sort of like an evolution a bit for their, I guess, comfort level of getting into the space, and you know, being able to sort of you know, get in and really help, you know, see patients and understand what it is? You know, I've seen like a lot of the medical practices, you know, whether they're you know, internal medicine or, you know, specific in one area, now they're beginning to really understand and see the value of cannabis. So it must be sort of interesting to see some of these doctors and have them sort of come in and understand, you know, what they're doing right now, getting into the space, and having medical marijuana is really an option to help with their patients.
So we focus a lot on direct response marketing, and it's elective, right? So the doctors that we mostly work with are really focusing on cannabis right now. And so I think what you know, one of the biggest changes is they've had aha moments where they're not just going to open up a green store with a plus sign and a marijuana leaf and have a line around the corner, right? It's not as easy as that. Unfortunately, for our experience in our company, we come from the LASIK industry, which, believe it or not, is very similar to this industry, where there's a longer customer buy cycle. People don't wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm going to get LASIK today, right? There's major obstacles that you have to sell through. You know, is somebody going to blind me? You know, my eye's going to hurt? Is it going to be too expensive? Am I going to be able to go to work tomorrow? Whereas in cannabis, is it legal, right? Is it too expensive? Can I carry my weapon? Am I going to get arrested? And so how do you take patients and bring them through that customer buy cycle, like I mentioned earlier? And that has a lot to do with funnels, right? And making sure that there's no leakage in your funnel from customer acquisition all the way to monetization. And so that's important because doctors are really good at being doctors. Most doctors don't necessarily have marketing in the kind of customer experience realm, right? So if you call to book a doctor's appointment today, right, are you going to show up for that appointment? How is the doctor going to make sure that you show up so they don't have an empty seat and they can collect money on that and provide a service? And so doctors aren't necessarily, you know, from my purview, you know, they don't excel at that. They excel at the medical part of that. And so what we've been able to do is really help them with that by kind of having supplemental services for them. So we can book a patient now for them and say, Dr. Jones, we booked a patient for you at 11 a.m. on Tuesday. We can then send the reminders to the patient. We can collect money on behalf of the patient so the doctors can do what they love, and that's practice the medicine and not worry about, how do I drive traffic? How do I follow up with my patients? How do I keep the business going?
Interesting. It's such a value of education, both for the doctors and also the consumer, which I think is fantastic and really what is needed in such a new and complex industry. One of the things, Gary, that's always sort of caught my mind in being around, and yes, all of us are up here, and we all collect data, and we're all in technology, if you will, but data is the most incredible world that's out there, probably one of the most overused words as well, and come to the point where sometimes data maybe is sort of that 4-letter word. And so just being an expert in the data space and all the different things that you guys look to and analyze, collect, and so forth, how does one really understand what is considered valuable and what is not so much valuable?
Absolutely, and it's as we see each other. We go to many conferences, and we have with New Frontier Data. Spend a lot of time sponsoring and educating companies on what data, how they can use data, right? How they can monetize it. Jada calls it the "what's in it for me," right? So for all of our customers, we have to really decide and help create something that's in it for them, right? Buying data, especially in this industry right now. In the beginning, data, nobody really understood why data would be really important on the business side, right? If you think about it, before 2014, in cultivation, if you were collecting data, it was either you were under indictment or you were about to be, right? I mean, seriously, and it sounds funny, but it's not a joke. Right? So in 4 or 5 very short years, going from the mentality of if I collect all of my grow data and I keep it somewhere, I'm going to get arrested and I have all this self-incrimination, to maybe I should share my grow data or my operations data or my manufacturing data, my sales data, so that the entire industry can benefit from it. Then it's a really long, there'd be a really long answer to this, but a couple of really important points to make it short. One is, technology will enable this industry to grow faster and mature faster by standardization. And standardization of data, standardization of business nomenclature, business operations, taxation, banking. Oh, and then by the way, standardization of growing, identifying, manufacturing, delivering, prescribing. All of these things, Jeff, I think it was really astute, observation or a statement that you made, that if we think about it, every single sector or vertical in this industry has had to recreate itself from the mature world just so that it could operate here. And really our charge, and Jada's charge of us since 2014 has been to elevate and make more professional the creation of each one of those verticals through the intelligence that we provide.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of Jeff's statement about that, it's so true. It's you decide you want to go and you want to start a restaurant, you want to start an insurance industry, agency, you want to do anything outside basically of cannabis. You've got the decades and decades and decades of technology and resources and banking and infrastructure. Yeah, thank you. To basically be able to go and do that, and I think that's one of the most incredible challenges, and really kudos to anyone who's really entered the space. It's definitely significant, and a challenge there. Scott, come back to you. One of the things that I think we discussed a little bit earlier, which I sort of thought was very interesting, is really understanding sort of what drives the lifetime value, with regard, and also sort of the contact strategy that you have with your business, creating that lifetime value for your customers, if you will. So thought, maybe you can elaborate the importance of that and staying in front of them as well.
Yeah, I think in general, right, it's incumbent upon all of us to know what our data and our, and user reporting and analytics to understand what the business looks like. I think to answer that question specifically, dispensaries and MMTCs are spending a lot of money, right, on licenses and growing and refining and opening up stores. And if customers are just coming to them once, right, then it's an epic fail for everybody. And so how do you identify what a customer potential is, i.e. their lifetime value, and how do you go from one transaction or pre-transaction to get there, right? And so if I was going to look to acquire a patient and assume that they're going to be potentially spending $100 a month for their medicine, right? You know, over a 3-year horizon, it might be $3,600, and that can help me drive a lot of my investment decisions in both customer acquisition as well as customer retention. It all falls apart, right, if that customer only comes once and then drops off, right? If you've spent, let's call it a couple $100 to acquire a patient and they only come in once for $100, right? You don't have to be a mathematician to figure out we've lost money, right? And so how do you know, whether it's this industry or other industries, right? How does a service provider develop those contact strategies and those touch points to keep the customer engaged with them to continue along the program? You know, we talk about defectors and cheaters, right? So defecting is if you've actually left the industry. You purchased once, you were disenchanted for whatever reason it is, and you leave. Cheating, maybe you try one dispensary this month and then you go to another one the next month and you move around, which is fine. But you know, what does the dispensary do, or brands in the future, in order to keep that person engaged with them? Is it the right sequence of emails? Is it texting? Is it somebody just calling and saying, hey John, we really value your business and we hope you're feeling good. You know, what's it gonna take to get you in here next time? Right? This is new for a lot of people. You know, I compare it to if you walked into a supermarket and you didn't know how to eat a banana, and you picked up a banana and started slamming it against a table, right, and didn't know what to do with it, right? To all of us, we know how to open up a banana. And for cannabis, it's very similar, right? A lot of people aren't familiar with a tincture or vaping or some of the other products. And so, you know, it's a fine line between not taking enough or taking too much. And so, you know, what kind of contact strategy do we need to keep them, you know, engaged, right? Do you need to call them the next day? Should you call them in 2 weeks to see how they're doing? Should you invite them to a lecture series, right? And so it's all about this contact strategy in order to keep them engaged so that you're showing ROI essentially on your business model.
Do you mind if I?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So to Scott, you said something that's really important earlier, and we've been talking about this a lot lately. The idea 4 years ago or 5 years ago was if you put a pot leaf or CBD, THC or CBD on a product, that was a marketing scheme. That was sufficient. That's no longer sufficient, right? There are some estimations that, you know, between the summer of 2017 and the winter of 2018, there were between 100 and 120 new delivery systems introduced every single week. And so with that idea and with that information, that data, we have to understand that an educated consumer is very difficult to do, right? An educated consumer is very difficult to achieve. And so a very traditional marketing, and very traditional, so you have direct response and loyalty, very traditional, old world, if you will, marketing understanding is still very important in this industry. Even though we're recreating each one of our verticals in order to operate, it doesn't mean that we have to forget the 30 years or 40 years of direct marketing and consumer engagement information out there that we've been operating with, like I said, for the last 30 or 40 years. And so really, back to the technology piece, providing enabling technologies and working with companies such as Scott's and Jeff's, is the idea is shorten that learning curve, right? Let's learn from what we've done in our previous world. Let's not try to circumvent and try to obfuscate or redefine what marketing, what consumer engagement is. Let's just take the best of what we learned before and apply it here.
It makes a lot of sense. Jeff, one of the things that, sort of going back, your comment resonated to me about sort of creating everything, is part of, like, I look at the cannabis industry as well in every facet now, incredibly tech heavy. You know, whether you're a cultivator, whether you're loyalty, whether you're a social network, it's all centered around technology. Would you agree that a lot of that is just based because we're sort of starting from ground zero, if you will?
Yeah, I do. I think what's because the industry started just a few years ago, it had the ability to be created the way it wanted to be created. So they didn't have to retrofit a lot. They were able to start from scratch. And because they were able to start from scratch, they were able to start with technology being at the center of so much of what happens. It's a lot easier to create something than it is to break something apart and then rebuild it. And a lot of the industries that are a lot more mature have a much tougher time of adapting and moving forward from a technology standpoint because their systems and everything's in place, and you have these big ships and they're hard to steer. Here, there were no big ships. There were a lot of little ships, so I was able to do that. And so I definitely agree with you. I think this is a much more technology-focused industry than most industries because of that. Getting back to the data piece, what's interesting, I find, companies like New Frontier Data, they're doing an amazing job at providing the data to be able to make smarter decisions. I would say the challenge is not with the data and the insights that are being provided. The challenge is with the people that need it to make their businesses better and their ability to consume it appropriately.
Yeah.
And so I think where we're at now, where one of the big issues with data today are the customers of that data. So whether it be the retailers, the growers, the people in the industry that could really leverage that data to be smarter, they haven't necessarily caught up with the providers to be able to really leverage that data. And I think that that's a miss right now that we have, where you just have a whole universe out there that just is not smart enough yet to take advantage of what's available.
I think that's a really good point. We spend, as you can imagine, we spend every day talking about that very specific problem, right? At the end of the day, and especially this year, right? And this is a little bit gratuitous because our investors are in the audience, but especially this year, the idea of being profitable and making sure that you're providing a service that people are actually going to pay for has been really, really important. And so we've done a couple of things to help bridge that gap. But candidly, if you're rebuilding, as we go back to talking about rebuilding each vertical, you're also going to relearn some things, because in the mature market, right, data, for example, our product is extremely valuable and it commands huge amounts of money that the cannabis industry just doesn't have, right? So, one data indice, for example, Bloomberg is a client of ours, right? Well, Bloomberg may spend, $100,000 a month on one data indice. Believe me, they don't spend $100,000 a month on New Frontier Data's data indice, right? So there is some of that. We have to shorten our own learning curve, right? As we're trying to help the industry shorten their learning curve. So we've done a couple of things to answer that, right? We put out a data marketplace. Again, the democratization of data. And we were talking today, there are going to be some things over the next kind of 45, 60 days. We're going to go out and very openly talk to the market. Jada has been telling us since she started the company, be transparent. Make sure you provide value, be transparent with the market. We're transparent as we can possibly be. We just opened the kimono of our database to the entire market. Come in and take a look. Well, now we're going to talk to the market in that same transparent way. I think, Jeff, what you said is, again, very, very astute, and we're absolutely, struggle's not wrong, we tackled that challenge every day.
Yeah, it's just a learning. It's just a continual learning curve, and again, as more professional management gets into the cannabis industry, companies like New Frontier Data and Springbig and CalmEffect, we all benefit from that because they understand the value of really how to leverage it, right? So data on its own is valueless unless you can figure out how to make money from it. So at the end of the day, we're hoping that we're providing the information that allows retailers, manufacturers, distributors to be able to make more money because they're smarter about their business.
Questions?
I do.
Yes.
For Scott, maybe. Opt-in rates compared to other industries, and given the sensitive nature of it being a personal kind of product, are those relatively high? And then once you have the purchase and you start engaging with the consumer for the first 30 days or so, is it active communication? Are they asking more about health-wise, prices, availability? Like, what type of communication happens in the first 30, 60, 90 days?
Well, your first question, I think that opt-in rates are different depending on what your messaging is and who you're communicating with. We see very healthy take rates for our campaigns, opt-in rates on our websites as well as booking appointments. I think that people are very engaged. And what we thought that people were going to be nervous about communicating what kind of conditions they have, and nervous about privacy, and that just hasn't been the case at all. Patients are more than willing to tell you exactly what they have, how many conditions they have, and the pain they're in, so that you can address that. And that's fantastic that there's that much transparency. I think a lot of it comes down to convenience and price, and then those other obstacles that I talked about. And so I think patients are, it'd be so easy if everybody, saw the websites, right, or interested in the industry and are calling and booking, saying, hey, I want to come into an appointment tomorrow and I'm going to be at a dispensary in 10 days once I get approved. It's just not the case, right? You have people at different parts of that customer journey, and so it's educating them for the first 30 days, via email. We call all of our patients, we follow up with them, we get texts, we get instant messages on the website, so that when they're ready, we're there for them. And we're always trying to figure out what type of additional content is relevant to them, so that they're ready to take the next step and feel good about the decision they're going to make. And and a lot of it is location, right? And so if we've got a doctor that's willing to do $99 in Orlando, but you live in Tampa, that may be a tough sell for them. And so we've actually gone where the customers are, where we found doctors who are willing to travel with us, and we'll actually pop up in events in remote areas. We've gone to Panama City and Tallahassee, brought in doctors who are willing to do it for less, and had patients fill a whole day's worth of appointments with them so that they can get certified. But it's not uncommon for responses to our newsletters for people who've been in our database for 6 months, right, 9 months, or knock on wood, that day. Right? So it depends, but if you get the right message in front of the right person at the right time, hopefully they'll respond.
What about retention? When does it flip to retention?
Well, for us on the customer acquisition side, it's always about retention, right? Once you have somebody who opts in, we first want to help them get the relief they need, right, by going to the doctor, and then we want to help them, stay in the program, right, and continue to get the medicine they need to keep going. So we constantly, send weekly newsletters, right, or other offers maybe that some of the dispensaries have, going on, to answer questions for them to keep them going. But certainly there are, some people are strong users, and others got the card and they want to go and they don't want to be communicated with. And certainly, we have very low unsubscribe rates, but some do. The amount of new subscriptions we get every day far surpasses the unsubscribes, which is normal. So it's all normal as long as you're doing the best practices. Like we talked about before, it's not anything new to this industry, what I do. It's consistent, it's the same kind of processes, models, understanding what's going on to keep them moving.
But retention rates it also depends on the market. Like, you'll take a market like Washington, and we see this because we have probably about 150, 200 retailers in the state of Washington. And we see consumers that are shopping at multiple stores, and depending on the environment. So it's really important. So you have the ability to drive retention, but you also definitely see customers that are shopping. And in some markets, it's more commoditized than others. And where it's more commoditized, and they receive promotions from these retailers, if they're going to buy the same product, but someone's offering it for $10 less today, they're going to go shop over there. So it is also market dependent as well.
And I think also technology enables you to have that view, and inform your customers when to worry about retention and when not to worry about retention, right? Because there's still a couple of really important things about what Scott and Jeff just said, is that there's novelty, right? There's still novelty to this industry, right? It's for the recreational use consumer, there's novelty, right? They want to go try different things at different places and experience different different experiences. Sorry, with Scott's company and the patient retention, right? That's much. While there's a retail benefit of the retention is much more focused on helping the patient itself. And so the technology, I think, it really can help us, one, differentiate when to kind of lean into it and when to lean back. And also not treat a patient like a consumer. And that's going to be really important for this industry, to be for validity purposes, right, and to be taken seriously.
Hello, gentlemen. I know most of you, but Jeff, I'm Nick Frankel. I work for Media Gel. Talking about monetization of the data. We're an advertising company. People, complicate advertising. It's pretty simple. We help clients deliver messages to audiences. You guys are in a unique position where you're collecting valuable first-party data. Are you working with any companies like mine to build audience segments for advertisers to be able to serve against? And if you're not, do you want to start?
I was about to say, Nick, hey, don't forget, this isn't your pitch. But,
so the answer is, you're right, we do collect a lot of first-party data, and it's really interesting. We have not yet figured out, how to leverage that. Well, let me rephrase. We do leverage it with our clients every day, right? So we do have the ability to help them be smarter about how they talk to customers. We haven't necessarily figured out how to leverage the aggregation of that data to build audience segments or for other purposes yet. So I too have a couple of investors in the room, so I also got to be a bit careful.
Just careful.
But it is something that we're thinking about, and I'm happy to talk further.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump in on this. So in this actually, thank you, Nick, because you just teed this up beautifully for New Frontier Data. We do actually have, we have a capability. So people in the audience may have seen the announcement that we've agreed to acquire Zephyr. And through the Zephyr capability with our big data engine is really what I talked about earlier, that discover piece, right, of the 3 Ds, discover, define, deliver, where Media Gel is absolutely the delivery piece on the side for us. But we have a unique capability now that we have identified Zephyr and New Frontier Data, 51 million consumers that we know where they are, we know who they are, we know what they buy, we know where they buy it from. And so the top of that funnel of being able to curate an audience that then companies such as Springbig and even Scott's Colony's company with patients can then take that top of that funnel and put them through their process. We absolutely have that capability now. And again, for those service providers in the audience and for these gentlemen here, we aren't going to go direct to the market with that capability. We will partner. Media Gel is a portfolio cousin of ours in our investment portfolio from our investors in both. We're going to go to the service providers. We're going to be an enabling technology, an enabling company, just as we've always been. Thank you for that, Nick.
Hi, I'm Eddie, machine learning engineer, and I'm wondering about outliers. Is there any outlier that has surprised you the most from your data sets?
Outliers, was that for New Frontier Data?
Just in general.
Outliers in what?
Just just in the kind of the marketing side of things, or?
Actually, and not to sound too romantic, Springbig was an outlier that we didn't see coming, right? Seriously, we talked a year and a half ago, right? And the amount of growth and the amount of influence that you guys now have in the industry is incredible compared to where you were just a year and a half ago. And your kind of major competitor has gone from being the leader in the market to nowhere, right? And so it's I think outliers are a little different in this industry. There's a lot of possibilities still and capability still for outliers to be created in this industry. Would you guys agree?
For sure. There are a lot of surprises in this industry. We happen to be one of the positive surprises, which we're very fortunate. But in terms of consumer data, we do find some interesting information. Well, we see a lot of interesting information. Like for example, we were surprised in certain markets how frequently customers shop around, as an example. We thought that customers would find their stores and they would be comfortable shopping in their stores. In certain markets, they literally are shopping around every day, going from store to store to store. So that's something that we found. We also, see information which we found interesting with when someone participates in a retailer's rewards program, loyalty program, and they actually get to the point of redeeming a reward, right? Because we all play in these loyalty programs, right? Where with retailers, we earn these points and then we get to spend these points on things, right? On free stuff. What we found interesting is once a customer actually has enough points and redeems for free stuff, they're going to be 10 times more profitable than someone who didn't redeem the reward. So once they taste the benefits of that rewards program, which we knew that they were going to be a more profitable customer, we just didn't think it was going to be that much more. It was kind of
I think on the consumer data side for outliers, at the end of last year, we finished the analysis of about $5.5 billion worth of purchases, right? Over 3 years worth of data history, $5.5 billion worth of purchases, on top of the largest consumer survey ever done in the industry. One of the outliers that we found that really surprised me is that those that would be considered heavy users, heavy consumers, are you shaking your head that you approve of me saying this right now? Okay, good. Those that would be considered heavy consumers only make up 5% of the consumer base in this industry, right? That's huge. Right? If you think of the stereotype that is related to this industry, or that people think of this industry, 95% of consumers in this industry are either medicating or self-medicating, and only 5% are considered heavy users or stoners.
Is that because Florida doesn't have break-ins?
That's because Darren didn't take the survey.
Well played.
Well, actually, very interesting data there. Anyway, we're good? All right, great. Well, I wanted to just obviously thank you very much, Jeff and Scott and Gary. Hopefully it was insightful for you guys, and these 3 gentlemen be here to answer any questions. But thanks for coming out and participating in our panel today.